So first, quiz of the day. Does anybody know what a PEO is? Professional Employer Organization. I know what that is. I'll tell you just briefly here. A PEO is a company that shares the employer's responsibilities with the company who employs the people. We share the fiscal component of that. So the company, we pay that employee's salary under our FEIN, we pay the taxes, we take care of all of those components, file all the taxes, send the W-2s, and then the other part of that relationship is the hiring, the training, the onboarding, the firing, and you maintain that component of the relationship. So that's a little bit about what BBSI does. Our purpose here today is to share with you information on a whole variety of subjects, because the relationship we form with our clients makes us vested in their success. If they grow, we make more money. So we want them to grow. So what we do is we put inside of our company skill sets like business strategy, risk and safety, HR, and payroll. And we put all those people to work for the clients. And so the team that we have here today has expertise in all those areas. I mentioned risk and safety. We have a risk and safety manager. Matthew, you want to introduce yourself?
My name is Matthew Gonia. I've worked for some pretty big companies on the East Coast and on the West Coast, mostly working on diminishing any risk that you might have, making sure that workers' comp claims are taken care of. I'm not an insurance guy. I'm much more about the practical, what does the law say, what is the best practice, and trying to help your workers to be able to fit within those things, but also protect you as a business owner. Like I said, I've worked for some big companies. I'm new here to Utah. I've been here about 3 years, but it's been a great experience just to see. We went through the pandemic. I cannot think of a better place to have been. So I'm going to give a presentation in a few minutes, but do we want Roy, works in HR.
Good morning, my name is Roy. I'm a student at BBSI. I've been with the company for about 2.5 years. Before then, I served in a variety of HR executive roles. I was the Vice President of Human Resources at UPHCA Conference, just had about 5 years. They had about 3,000 employees then. I was the Vice President of Human Resources and Science and Communication. They had about 10,000 employees. And then the VP of HR at Telephone GSA, they had about 20,000 employees. I was there for about 10 years. So the best thing about being at BBSI is that we get to work with small companies like you guys. We provide payroll, human resources, workers' compensation, and business strategy services for companies that necessarily can't afford to hire just a single payroll person. But instead they get a whole team of people for a fraction of the cost of hiring just one person. They get a whole bunch of people to support them. So it's really rewarding work that we're doing now. Thanks for having us here. Hopefully you guys will learn something today. During the presentations, if you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand and let us know.
I'm Caitlin Murphy. I'm an HR consultant at BBSI. I've been there for about 2 years. I have not been a VP of HR, but I'm like a chief fire router, with HR. I've worked in action sports, biotech, healthcare. My dad's a contractor, so I'm very familiar with that industry. It's a pleasure being here today. I really hope you guys get a lot of good information. And of course, I'm very excited if you have questions. It should be good time. So, thanks.
Thanks, guys. So, as you've been encouraged to ask questions, we really do want to interact with you. We want to answer the things that are most important to you and your companies. And we're going to do that. We're going to start by this first period of time just really addressing risk and safety and how that affects your bottom line, how that helps you be a competitive entity in the marketplace, and how you keep those costs down. And so I'm going to turn the time over to Matthew, and as he speaks, please just shoot your hand straight up if you got a question. If I don't see a lot of questions, I'm going to ask questions of Matthew for you, because I want him to dive a little bit deep on some of the really important things you're going to hear him say. So please feel free to ask questions, so I don't have to, but if I do, just know I'm doing it, hoping it's a point of interest. And if you guys want us to move on, you can chuck something at us or whatever you feel is appropriate. So, Matthew.
So there's a handout on your tables. I apologize, I probably didn't make enough for everybody here. I know it's XMod stuff. If we go that direction, great. But I'd rather tell a story right now, and if you guys decide, no, we want to go in this and understand these things a little bit more, we'll go in that direction. here's the story. This is a client of ours that similar business to what you are all in. He decides he wants to grow. He's sick and tired of going out and giving a client the bid, seeing if he can work it all through, then showing up and doing the job, and then being the one that collects the money. He decides he needs to have more people. So he hires 2 people. One of them is a 56-year-old person who is very skilled in what you do, and that person also says, I got a 25-year-old son who's going to come on with me. Spanish-speaking both. Okay? And so he hires them. And within a month, the 56-year-old plumber starts complaining that his knees are sore. Some of you are smiling. I think this happens a lot. But nobody says really anything except he does tell the owner, my knees are sore. 56. You guys are all thinking the same thing. I'm 50. I'll be 55 this year. My knees are sore all the time, and I'm not a plumber. Nothing else goes on. He continues doing work, fulfills all of his job. 2 months now down the road, starts limping. My knees are still sore. And the owner doesn't do anything about it. Doesn't make any calls. Doesn't really check in with anybody. And then all of a sudden, he's told that I've already gone to my doctor and seen a specialist, and they're telling me it's work-related now. So what do you do at this point? I can tell you what we would have to do. What do you do at this point?
Well, you have to call your insurance company.
Yeah.
And get them involved immediately.
Okay. What do you think they're going to have you do?
Obviously, give them info of when he worked for you and the ins and outs of what's
They're
going
gonna
on.
send them to a workers' comp doctor.
Yeah, they're going to send them to they're going to open the claims, what they're going to say. Do they give you much guidance on this is what you could do, this is what you can't do? Nothing. Okay. That's interesting.
Matthew, I like what I'm hearing. But I gotta ask you guys, why are you gonna tell on yourself? This guy was already getting his own treatment. Why do you go and involve some external agency that's gonna jack up your rates and mess with you and not tell you anything, not help you? Any thoughts on that? I just want to break in on that and see what you have.
What I perceive with these kind of claims is that if you get between the man and his doctor, all the expenses are now yours. The workers' comp is an insurance policy to protect your company and you personally. You don't say, don't go to the doctor. You don't say, you've got to go to this doctor. Workers' comp, what do you recommend? Workers' comp, then once you put out that first accident report form, they don't contact you at all. You don't know anything that's going on. And that's the way it should be. That's my opinion.
That's an interesting, what we do is we bring people in and now become your consultants.
Yeah.
We're saying, this is
To somebody hypothetically first before you go to your insurance company.
and we own our insurance company, so that's a little bit different. And so I have a little bit more pull, but I've been through these experiences before. We all know that in most cases, the knees are probably from wear and tear from doing plumber work for the last
Knees and backs.
and you could go right into shoulder. It's all going to be soft tissue. And all of these things, I worked in California about 25 years ago. Those knees and backs would always turn into $100,000, $130,000 claims, just like that. And it really didn't matter what you did. They're going to the doctor. And so what we want to do, okay, let me go back to our story here and see if we can talk a little bit more about it. Because I think loss is the 4-letter word that we all need to sit and think about. How does this affect us later on? This person, we open up a claim. Now at that point, can you still go ahead and pay off the doctor if you decided to after that claim's over?
My opinion is no, because you put yourself in a liability situation.
Now, there's the perfect answer. It depends. Because now we start asking questions like, do I trust this individual who I just brought on 2 months ago? What type of a trust is there between the two of us? But you're absolutely right. Do we lose control of it, or do we pull it back in and start? We lost control of this one the minute that we didn't do anything in the beginning. Now, we also have a claim open, and the person, like I said, they're Spanish speaking. How's your company going to be able to communicate with that person? I know they have translators. Are they going to be able to locate him, direct his doctor visits from now on? Because now we want to get him to the right doctor. There'll be what they call an IME later on, where they're going to start deciding who and what percentage belongs to you. But we want to have that control in the beginning. I would always say, if you know in the beginning, you can start cutting these costs much lower. And in some cases, there are companies out there that'll say, look, I'll send you to a doctor, I'll pay the $200 in the beginning, and we'll see where it goes. I would recommend you always let your insurance company know these things are happening.
But along that, if we call on every itch and bump and bruise,
Amen.
when do we know when to call? Because it's constant. Somebody's always hurt. That's what we do.
Yeah.
You get up and it hurts. And you get hurt at work every single day.
Were you going to say something?
No, I just checked it because the discussion that's unfolding is really a smart discussion with the comments that I've been hearing. And really, this is always the problem, right? It's like, down with the insurance, but oh wait, I need it. It's a painful process, and yet we need it, and it's still painful, right? It's not a fun thing, so.
But we'd be on the phone every day.
Yeah.
And I think, for me, this is where you want someone who you might be able to call on the side. You can say, look, this is what I'm running into. My first question is going to be, how much do you trust this individual, and how much do they trust you? The bigger you are, the harder that's going to be. The second one would be, as you open these things up, the second one would be, who are you hiring, I think? And understand those hiring terms. I think that's a lot of questions I'd love to throw you guys later on in the panel. How am I determining who I'm going to bring on? The gentleman that this guy hired, it was difficult to do any background check on. And that's what happens in this new situation we have. We're hiring whoever we can, and in some cases, people who we can't even verify. But I would agree with you. There's a certain point where you say, who am I going to call, and what's the guidance here? And 90% of the time, you're probably not going to have a claim. So how do you figure those things out? I think I've found that it's best to have someone else to talk to you to be able to weigh those things out and say, what other reasons would this person be calling in a claim? People call in claims because they're truly hurt and it's been happened at work. They're truly hurt and it's a long-term thing, or they're disgruntled. And I don't think I answered all your questions, but I think the best thing you can do is have someone else who you can bounce ideas off of. Try and understand what's the relationship between you and that person. In this case, the claim got called in. Workman's compensation started trying to figure out, did he have other issues before? And those pre-existing. And it's a difficult thing. Soft tissue is a hard thing to make a determination on. This one was sort of lucky, but let me talk about the business part of it. The business part of it, if you remember, he wanted to expand. Those were his only two workers. The apprentice now couldn't go and do anything. So I put him right back to where he was at. He was no longer able to grow his business because he couldn't find a second person. And at that point, he was trying to figure out, how do I cut the workman's compensation loss and just survive as a business? It ended up costing $19,000. That's real, and that was a pretty good claim. There was a whole tear in the meniscus on this side, partial tear on this side. The problem is, no one ever came back to work. This guy never showed back up, ever again. And it really hurt the business in that perspective. Had we been able to communicate early, we could have brought him to a better doctor, probably could have kept communication up. Cost may be about the same. Because he was so small, his X-mod, do we want to talk X-mods or not? Is there anybody here that needs the explanation of an X-mod or an experience modification, or knows how it affects your business? How does the experience modification rate affect your business?
3 years.
So for 3 years, it's going to sit there. There's some calculations on that page. We can go through it even afterwards if you want me to do it. Insurance companies figure out what they expect you to lose every year, and then they figure out what you have lost. Assuming one, the expected loss is bigger than true loss, then you're doing okay.
So what you find is workers' comp is a loan. They will pay for the procedure, you're gonna pay it off in 3 years.
Yeah, you're gonna pay it all. You're gonna pay it all. This is a strange form of insurance. You would think, well, I have insurance to make sure I'm protected. Yeah, you're gonna pay for it in the next 3 years. So, what's the best thing to do? And we can talk about this. One thing is, you get a huge discount if they don't lose any time. If you can find a way to keep them working 2, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, I know 6 months of continued salary is almost impossible for a small business. But there's some small businesses out there that say, I'll just pay you for the next 2 weeks. Completely legal to do, just let the insurance company know you're doing it. Because one way or the other, you're gonna lose. But if the insurance company's having to pay for it, it's gonna cost you much more. There's a calculation that says in here, if you don't have a loss time, you're gonna almost pay 30% of what it should be costing you.
Now,
A huge discount.
put them back to work, if they have restrictions, are you not allowed to change their pay with certain restrictions, like pay them up to, or above like 70% of their original pay, even if they can't do their job, but they can sweep the floor?
I would not, I would find whatever job it is, but I would not drop their pay at all. I would keep them going at 100% of what they were getting paid before. You're still going to see a huge savings on the long term because the insurance company is going to only make you pay 30% of it, as long as there's not a loss.
How does that work with, like, if your guys typically work, say, 55, 50 hours, and you bring him on, can you just work in the 40s?
I'm going to throw it out there. I think you can go with the 40%. Let me double check. I'll give you my card so we can call that one.
Well, I would say, if they're sitting around, they're gonna have to at least get
Yeah.
40 hours.
You would think, right? But
You would hope.
not.
And again,
That's how they were hired. If you said, oh, I'm hiring you, your base pay is based off of 55 hours a week. But probably 40 hours a week, and then if you work any overtime, you're getting paid overtime. So you can pull it back to 40. I would think that would be illegal.
and if you trust them, one of the best things to do is to explain to them, say, look, if we put you through workman's comp, this is what you receive, which is 60%. If I continue paying you, this is what we're going to do, you're going to receive this. Most cases, people would sit there and say, thank you so much for allowing me to do this. In most cases. Those fraudulent cases, I guarantee you, that's where you start seeing red flags pop up. No, I don't want to work. But if you make that offer, and they don't accept it, you just protected yourself because the insurance company didn't want to pay. We just went a long different direction. I think I gave you, any
Well, the
other?
hard part is that percentage, and it's kind of your damn if you do and damn if you don't use insurance, for liability.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I had an employee get hit in the head with a piece of pipe and ended up with, 20 stitches in his head. And it was my son.
Okay.
I just say, I'm on a bike rack. I have a supply house that they should have been.
So you weren't there?
No.
Oh, okay.
But, I just said the heck with it, paid $3,200.
You paid it all, yeah.
Because you take it to your,
Yeah.
but you're gonna pay more in the long run.
Matthew, can I
Go for it, please.
The point you made earlier about if I call in every bump and bruise, and every time they said their knees hurt, I'd be on the phone all day. And the point you just made, where you accepted some risk, it is kind of the answer to your question. If you just kind of picture a risk spectrum, like the employee is super risky, we don't know them, we don't know how they're going to react to something. Maybe you act a lot more cautiously than if they're over on this less risky side and it's your son. And you're like, hey boy, let's just go pay for the stitches. And are you okay? And maybe you paid him.
Well, if it was something that's gonna bother him the rest of his life, an employee's knee or this or that, I'm gonna go workers' comp because that liability could come back on you.
Yeah.
in the
Somewhere in this risk spectrum though, is where all those decisions are made. And it's a decision that you've got to train your supervisors on, you've got to train your foreman on. They've got to be able to recognize these things and understand your appetite for that risk. You don't want, the guy who's gonna be looking at it with more of a hard nose, that's gonna put you at risk you don't want. And the guy who's gonna look at it too soft, spending all his time on the phone, calling everything in. So it's important that you not only decide what your appetite for that risk is, but also that you build the culture and train your supervising and your team so they understand how to execute this strategy. It's essentially a risk strategy, right? Just that quick comment.
And I think as we were talking about, understanding each one of those individuals that you have hired and what the risk is, for me, again, I've been in California, I've been in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, where, being transparent, there's a lot of people south of the border that we're hiring that are qualified to do the job, and that's about all we were able to have. Okay? Put all the legal parts aside. And so we brought them on. Was there risk involved in it? Absolutely. Was there a communication issue? There's a lot of communication issues, especially after someone's hurt, and cultural issues that now, I lived in Mexico for many years. You get hurt in Mexico, or if you have a cough or a fever and you're at work, 3 days off. That happens automatically. The systems are different, and you get sent to the same doctor you can see for a personal issue. Most of the workers that are coming up don't understand we have different issues and different ways that things are paid for. That's why we have to explain it to them as best we can, built on trust. Question real quick. I have another story I want to share.
I don't want to get into way too much, but on the experience modifier, the days off triggers, and you got the same package, you get the reserve, and that's what affects us most significantly. But they can hang on and on for years, and they have the biggest impact in a company. And so, how do we? Can you guys go into negotiating? Because oftentimes that's where frauds occur. We can say this guy's, we know he's out working, we know he's out. Lifting 500-pound bowling balls now, or whatever he's doing, or she's doing, but yet we have to, as an employer, have to become these little private detectives to try to bring the institutions back to say, take this $250,000 reserve off my experience modifier.
And you don't have as much leverage with a company. Let's just say you're going through WCF. You don't have as much leverage. They're going to look at their bottom line and say, it's not worth us. It's not worth it for us. Right. They will if they think they're going to save money off it, but you're right. 80% of the time they'll say,
They're just going to charge me for it.
So what's the solution? I'm not here to sell our company at all. We own our own insurance company. We partner with companies. So in our case, now you have a middle person that knows you and is probably meeting with you monthly or every 2 months. And since we own that company, we have a lot more leverage to say, look, this is what we know. So it's a lot tighter knit of an opportunity. I would still say, and when you guys pass through work, we have a salesperson too. You can give them a call. I'll give you my number, and I'm more than willing to say, this is what I've seen in 30 years. This is how I would push it. But I was on your guys' side. I worked for some large companies like Starbucks and FedEx, trying to get the workers' comp insurance to send an investigator. You're right. It took 3 or 4 calls, threats. I wasn't the nicest person. Yeah. Just because, again, insurance companies are much like politicians. We don't like to deal with them at all. We don't. Let me go a different direction on this. How are we on time?
T-minus 10:26.
10:26. Okay. So the second story has it depends on how big you are, and I realize you're not going to be worried about OSHA showing up typically in your sites. But let me give you a story about someone else who's in a similar industry. They were doing training, and they were only going first story and second story. They had decided, for certain reasons, to keep their crew to 8. No bigger than 8. They didn't want to get bigger than that. And there's a reason why we'll talk about in a second. So, as they looked at and they bid on a new opportunity, they saw 4 stories in Mapleton. It was a commercial building, and they saw a lot more opportunity to make a lot more money. Now, they've done fall protection training. They trained all their guys in how to do fall protection when it was needed. They were pretty much set. A lot of the trainings I would do with them. As they move up, now they're going to the 3rd story. This is in February, and they send a 24-year-old young man to build a parapet on the outside so they don't have to have fall protection. But he didn't put fall protection on. He falls 30 feet to the cold soil. He calls me, and he says, we've got him on the way going to, he's going to the hospital, he'll be there for months, okay? Multiple surgeries, this is going to be costly. So the workers' comp, like we said, we know that this is going to be costly. Again, they're only the side, they're only 8. You can imagine where their workers' comp comes from in this direction. But that's not why he's calling. He says, I realize that we have to contact OSHA. He's going to spend the night at the hospital, he's going to be admitted. And there's rules, so if you have people being admitted to the hospital or an amputation, you have to call OSHA, and you've got a certain amount of time to do that. They call, OSHA says we'll be there at 7 a.m. in the morning. So I show up at 5:30 with them, we walk the entire site, everybody is sent home that same day. OSHA shows up, OSHA walks through it, wants to know about training. They ask him about OSHA logs. We could talk about that later. Remember, he was only how many employees? Didn't have 2 OSHA logs, so they didn't check any of those things. They interviewed both owners in a truck because it was too cold to be outside. It only took 15 minutes. He walks away. How much do you think the OSHA fine was?
Thousands.
It could have been $70,000 had they shown that it was going to be, that they'd willfully done this. They'd shown all their training records, they were open, they let them look at the site, they called it in. Everything was proven, except for the point where they said this person didn't put on their fall protection, although he'd been told to do so. $700. It almost makes you think, why would I care about OSHA anymore? And Utah, OSHA does a very good job of trying to be friendly to you guys. But it's because they had everything set up long before they got there. Yes, you're right. The workman's comp, $620,000. Over 3 years, can you imagine trying to pay that back to workman's comp? They're still in business. They're still in business.
Matthew?
Yeah.
I want to make 2 quick comments. I just love the concept that you put in all of our heads when you said, workers' comp's a loan. It's essentially a line of credit, an operating line of credit, where you paying a premium to keep that open, and then you have the opportunity to use it up to whatever cost, right? Including, payments to children of a deceased person, like there's all sorts of costs, right? So I love that idea. Just wanted to recapture that in all of our brains. And then the second thing is, I'd love to hear from you all. So you just shared a story about falling. What are some of the risks that you face on your job sites? That could be catastrophic, similar. We've shifted away from my knees are aching. Let's talk about more of that acute, more like punchy moment where somebody fell off the 3-story building. What are those in your industry?
We face a lot with, especially this year with the water being able to be high excavation.
Yeah, like cave-ins, right?
Everything going to man, we're at risk. Driving down the road, unloading a truck, there's forklifts, there's track hoses, there's everything driving around. So many things are moving around you, ladder safety, scaffolding, man lifts, ice, you name it, we're exposed to it.
Chemicals?
Certainly.
Yeah.
We're starting to do a lot of excavation too, a lot of sewer main excavation, but I think that we don't understand the risks in even loading and unloading equipment, having the right gloves, so nobody uses their finger or the right boots. That's something that we lack at providing, and this is making us very aware that, hey, this is what needs to come first, and then the excavation can follow.
How many of you, when you were 21, were bulletproof?
Oh, yeah.
All of us were, right? Then you're an old graybeard and you have the wisdom to know that everything will kill you. Everything's gonna kill me, everything's a risk, right? How do you build a culture in that 22, 24-year-old to understand that I'm super glad you're bulletproof because my back hurts, so I'm glad you're here. But I need you to be safe. How do you build that culture?
With training your employees that, every time you walk into a job site, you don't know what you're walking into. So there could be a risk that's unseen even before you step one foot into that customer's house or that job site that you're walking into.
It's like smoking. When you're young, it's really cool. When you're way, you're not so cool. And you got another health problem, which I never had. I watched my dad, and he passed away, and that was the dirty little secret that nobody wanted to talk about. His 30 years smoking menthol cigarettes killed him. When you're young and in the Navy, that's just cool. Same thing. You're out there, you're working hard, you're out here, you're killing it, you're jumping off the truck, and pounding those knees in the ground, and guess what? Someday it will count. Every
Go ahead. One more quick question on the culture part. How do you empower your leaders, your supervisors, to make necessary corrections, to feel like they have a voice in this safety program? How do you empower them and teach them and make sure they're the right selection of person to do that for you, right? Because I think we can all plainly see that this risk safety mitigation strategy is a business strategy. It's an opportunity for you to be more competitive, to keep prices lower when you're paying less for insurance or whatever, right? There's a million different directions you can take this business-wise. How do you empower the leaders in your organization to make those corrections?
It's not just your employee or your managers. You have to have even the youngest guy be able to be empowered to stop something.
I love that.
Yeah, especially if they're seeing a manager do something. Because it's usually, I've heard over the years, it's me, the owner, who gets in trouble first before some of these, because we take stupid risks that we tell them, we don't want you doing it, but let me do it.
Yeah, who said that before?
Well, I want to.
Yeah, I do that with my sons.
I'll take the risk. I'm not going to let you do it. But I'll take it.
The most, unsafe people on the job, it's the new guy, and okay.
Be all right. That's right. Yep.
Instead of over and tell them.
Yeah.
Great point.
We've had this in the face. We've had that drill this in the face how many times?
It's pretty easy to engage your foreman and your supervisors into the safety program, because if that guy gets hurt, you now no longer have a guy. Take care of your people, because it's going to affect you.
I love that concept of take care of your people. I firmly believe that that's the right culture for all of you in your companies. We run into too many times to companies who have almost an angry attitude towards their employees. Understandably, employees can be frustrated. And managing all the things that you all manage is a lot of weight. And then you got a knucklehead doing knucklehead things all the time, and you're trying to get him to help you succeed, and it's frustrating. But maintaining that caring for your guys is, in really crude terms, an investment. It's an investment. Share a quick Army story with you. I spent 20 years in the Army, and I was an artilleryman. And anybody on the firing line could yell out at any point, "Check fire!" Which meant stop, everybody stop. Everybody stop, get away from your gun, everything stops. No more firing, stop. To your point earlier, anybody on the firing line was empowered to do that. How do you make sure that the guy that just got hired last week that's 19 and a little timid, because he's standing around with a bunch of guys who know what they're talking about, and they're you, right? They're confident people. How do you make sure that he can make that correction when he sees the truck stop, somebody's about to dump the trailer in an unsafe way or something, right? Like, how do you do that? Just a couple more quick thoughts on that before we move off this topic.
Remind them and encourage them.
How? Do you have any experience or stories or things where you've had successes doing that?
It's constantly, if we go out there, why are you standing in this type of situation, why you put yourself in, if you see it, say something. So we're constantly encouraging each other to make sure each other goes home every night. And then it's also, like, I'll ask the guy on the ground, this happened yesterday, why is he up there on the lift, up there, cutting with the sawzall, and he doesn't have safety glasses on? And you let him go up there. So it's constantly encouraging each other to look at and watch.
Crazy.
You can stop it. You can stop him from going up there, because you're the one that's gonna have to call me or his wife.
Great example, which is how OSHA sees it too, which is why they fight him at all. Even after they've done all the right things, they still thought you could have stopped it. That's great, great
So
example.
that's where we encourage the strength that you have the ability to stop anything.
Yeah.
Whether it's our trade or not.
And when it's happening is good, same thing. My son was walking around at the snorkel the other day, and said, now, walk around, you know, you never know what's coming down. And then, you know, we try to have, you know, company meetings monthly and discuss these kind of things, whether it gets in one ear and out the other, but at least talk about situations, whether it's doing something wrong or something unsafe, to
That's a great
try
practice.
to have a,
Yeah.
you know.
Does anybody else who do a safety meeting of any kind? Is that weekly, monthly? What's your guys' success?
I try monthly, every Monday morning.
So you're doing weekly. It's a lot of the larger contractors, especially where you're framing it, they're requiring dailies now, which is an amazing thing. It's just, as opposed to an hour meeting where you talk about safety, now we're talking about it for 2 minutes. But those stories about the guy that loses the 3 fingers, and to figure out why did that happen, those stories get to people. I was with a contractor the other day, electrical contractor. He has, it's not an app, it's something that was designed, and then I can steal it from him and share it with everybody, I'll be the first to do it. But what it allows is his 60 guys have to send one of these in to him every day. And I thought, are you kidding? Where are you going to read that? There's a nice little thing at the bottom that if they rated safety or one of the things as a 1 or a 5, it sent it immediately to his email, and he had to respond. It allowed for the gentleman who was in charge of operations and safety to be able to have that 18-year-old and tell him, look, somebody just went off on a ladder and they weren't using the 3 points, whatever it might have been. It was amazing how quickly it is. But you can do that maybe with the right technology. And I don't think they're paying that much for it. I really don't. But that allowed for him to force it right back, and everyone knew what was going on. But you're right. I think communication has to happen. And most of you would say, yeah, but what about that 56-year-old who went to the doctor on his own? How do I make sure that's, if you have something where someone is saying every single day, everything's been great. Now you've got something you can go back to workman's comp and say, look, he told me there were no issues. But again, communications are on most of those things, one-on-ones.
So we work for one contractor that we stretch every morning.
Yeah.
And I asked him, what's the purpose of this? He says, I can tell who's hungover, who did something the night before and could have a problem. I'm like, okay, so we started doing a lot of that as well. And then we'll do pre-tasks, so we'll walk through pre-tasks of, moving some large pipe and whatever. And that's a big thing too. And then everybody's on the same page for some technical stuff. And that's where
That non-routine, especially if you're doing that non-routine, lifting up some cement, to change it, do a pre-task, walk through, yeah, it takes 5 minutes if you're good at it. But it changes the whole thing. And the stretching, I'm an advocate. I mean, I guarantee you, it allows you to see if someone's sore from some other reason in the knees, you're going to pick it up. If that supervisor, or if it's you, is walking around doing your one-on-ones, incredible what it can do. And yeah, there's some cost to it. But when you figure out what the long-term cost would be if you don't do it,
Your cost to your pre-task planning though, it may take you 5 minutes, but you guys know what they're gonna do, it will actually save you money, because everybody's on point when they go over there. So the pre-task planning is actually quite valuable, and it does cost you up front, and it's hard to spend money in the beginning, but it does pay dividends.
agreed.
So that's, and anybody have Raiders tickets, you go down to Raiders Stadium, you walk down that one hallway where Mortensen is, and you can see that lot, just walk down that hallway and you'll see Mortensen, you'll see the whole job site stretching, and that's what they're doing. You don't know what they're doing, but they're all out there and they're all stretching. And
Yeah.
that's Mortensen that makes us do that.
And Mortensen also has some things that were I remember seeing them in Pennsylvania. They were one of the first contractors to not have electrical extension cords on the grounds anymore. That was amazing, the changes that happened. They did a lot with making people wear gloves that had drills at the time. Yeah, it was amazing. They did things out of the ordinary, and it made it more effective in the end. There's some, I would say Dow is one of those companies, Toyota, Starbucks even, you know, that have just gone, they have a huge investment in safety in the beginning, and it pays off. And one of the things is they're worried about protecting the brand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's such a great point though, because it really does start with you all. It starts with the owners, it starts with the management, executive team. It starts with the mindset at that level. And then it can be a mindset shift because it just looks sometimes like it's costing so much, or do we really have to baby people, or whatever the mindset might have been, shifting to something else is challenging, but it has to start at your level. If it's interesting to you all, the last few minutes we have this hour, I'd love to go back to the business part, the XMOD, the money part of this. Were there any more questions about that? And maybe we could use your line of thinking as a jumping off point a little bit. Matthew's got some slides on the table there that we might be able to go through. Is that a point of interest, or would you guys like to take this risk and safety thing in a different direction? Somebody got a burning question that you were thinking about, we haven't touched on? Well, go ahead.
You're on a job site, and you go into the job meeting, and there's 50 guys around there, and the superintendent says any safety concerns on the job, and there's not one comment. They laid 10 pictures down on the table. They said, we probably ought to have a conversation. That wall that you've halfway cut apart is not sure. It could come apart. It came apart the next day. There's photographed documentation of the safety concerns around the job. As an owner, just walk in the project, there's people working without a hard hat, there's people working on a ladder that's not tied off, here's a wall that's going to potentially fall down, here's a beam, there's one bolt in the thing. This is the problem on the job. There's also a culture. Nobody wants to be singled out. Nobody wants to say anything. A photograph is worth 1,000 words. When that beam comes down, that general contractor has liability because now he knows it. So that's huge in controlling the job. You don't want to be an ass when that's the customer. That's the guy you're working for. But if you don't tell them, they don't know. A lot of times superintendents don't get out of the trailer. But there's a problem on the job site and nobody wants to say anything about it. Somebody needs to speak up. Because we don't put our people at risk. It may not be, our company may be working safe, but what's going on around you? How are the other people working? How's that going? We can't have radios, but all the Spanish-speaking people can have radios because who can tell them that they can't? And it's a problem on the job site. It really is an issue. And we need to get better at making sure we sign in our contracts a safety policy that we will adhere to. You bring that policy to the job, if it's coming apart, and you set it on the table and say, Mr. Superintendent, I signed this. This is your company policies. And make him actually step up his game because it'll be better for your company. Because you're putting yourself at risk. And the culture does need to change.
Yeah. And I think we took a long time, and I'm not speaking of in just plumbing alone. We took a long time for these changes. There's momentum now that you see behind it. People understand the benefit, but there are a lot of people that are still very old school, and they have to be convinced. You have to sell safety to them. Pictures and videos are available online for everybody.
The general contractor doesn't want to know, that way he feels he doesn't have any risk. You have to bring it to his attention. Now he knows he has to do something about it, which makes it safer for your people to work.
Agreed.
And maybe that's only an owner that can bring that to the table. Maybe it's not your foreman, maybe that's you and your influence on that. And then you're gone and you won't see the job for another 2 months. When you come back on site, I can guarantee you, they're looking at what is our risk, because what is he seeing? Because if there's an OSHA incident, I'm going to be the first one to testify that this job was unsafe and they were notified. So you can start, because you have a responsibility. You're a contractor employing people to that job, and even though you're working for that general contractor, you're still responsible for everything that's going around.
And you all, for the most part, own your business. I would say it's always nice to have someone else that you can utilize and say, I need you to show up at a certain site for me and just tell me what you see. That happens very often in my case. I'm driving all over the place, and if I see something, I'll stop, I'll call it out, or I let them know. I'm trying to figure out what the cultures of the businesses are. Any other comments? Do you want to talk about the XMod, or is that pretty?
I don't want to be the only one talking, but you don't worry. The EMOD is important. And you'll find that some contracts, look at your EMOD, Kennecott, you don't work if you have an EMOD rating that's high. Some contracts you can't get because of that. And I'm telling you, if you do not look for workers' comp to hey, I cut my finger, go get stitches. I'm not going to stand between you and your doctor and charge that to workers' comp, because now, okay, it just got a staph infection in it. And now we're going to have to amputate that finger. I paid for it up front. Well, now guess who's going to be on the hook for the rest of their life? Because this guy just lost a finger, and now he can't work. Workers' comp is your best protection for your business. Yeah, it affects your EMOD, but you've got to take it. Now, if you're getting back to work soon, please do. If it's like, secretary, I'm going to pay you to stay home because this guy's going to come pull some papers. She's like, hey, sweet. If you're going to pay somebody to stay home and you think, hey, I know this guy and I trust that I can pay for this, you do not know someone when somebody is throwing money out there and say, listen, we'll pay you to sit and do nothing. You know, stretch this out for 5 years. You know what? You don't maybe know him so well. So you need to protect your company. Let them handle it.
And I would say, get to know that workman's comp claims rep if you have. Feel very free. I've worked for some companies where we had high XMOD, especially in California. And I guarantee you, on a monthly basis, I was going through every single claim with every single one of them. The more that you make noise, the more they'll be on your side and take care of things for you. I'm assuming from the silence that we don't want to talk XMODs and it's straightforward.
I think you're wrong. I think we should talk.
You think we should?
Because, just briefly, because I think it's a mystery. EMOD, XMOD, your experience modifier is something, it should be part of your business strategy. We can, in 3 minutes, we can help you hopefully learn a little tidbit about it that you might not know prior. Just run through those really quick, man.
So, if you want to show me the first slide there, this is so you have all 3 slides in the handout. And I'll show you some different companies. Do you have any of the contractors that are asking for OSHA logs from you guys? They are, okay. That's an interesting perspective. It's a best practice because you can learn so much more when you see that. All right, let's look at this real quick. So company 1 is the first line. They've got an XMOD of a 0.91. If you look on the top, this observed is what their claims are. So in 2019, 2020, and 2021, which are the years that are counting if we're looking today for us, 2023, they're seeing that they lost $38,000. They were expected to lose about $45,000. Okay? So they're observed and they're expected. When they calculated it out, they're losing a lot less than what they were expected to. That's why they're at a 0.91. The second company here was expected to lose $100,000 in the first year. That's what they lost. The next year, $13,500. That's what they lost. And the next year, so this is just a 1. This is a 1.
Matthew, who else has ones besides this company with 3 years of experience?
A company who can't demonstrate much. There are not enough hours. They're there's just not enough hours. So if you're small, 3, 4 people, and you've been in business for a year or two, you probably have one. Probably not going to be anything. And again, who's watching this? NCCI is who's watching all these things. It doesn't matter if you're WCF, if you move to a different company, it's all being tracked, and they have access to all of that. So it's not like you can hide anything. Yes, you could pay for a claim on your own, out of your own pocket. In most cases, they won't even see this. Okay? Now here's the last one. This is many, many companies, and let's even throw the company where the fall was at in this one here. So they are expected to lose $120,000, but they were over that, almost $55,000 the first year. The next year, they had a pretty good year. They're right where they should be. And then in the third year, which would have been 2 years back, or a year and a half, they went about $28,000 above it. So the first one is really what's hurting them and making them go to 122. This means that whatever that premium is gets multiplied by not 1, but now 1.22. There's a second slide. Let's jump. I think that's the right one. So, can we go to the third slide and we'll come back to this one? Sorry, one more. One more. There we go. Okay. So in this case, this is a carpentry shop. Workman's comp rate's about 7 something in this case. Their estimated payroll is $1.5 million. Their premium at a 1 would have been $107,000. But because they have those extra ones right there, they're paying almost an extra 20, what is that? $27,000. Where's that $27,000 coming from? Right from their bottom line. So if you go back to that first slide, I think they're about $27,000 above their expected. The insurance company's making that money right back right now. You're going to be thankful for that. Let's go to...
Can I make a comment right there?
Yeah.
Sometimes the only person that knows that is your secretary. If she's not tied to your estimating, you're not getting your job right. Because it is coming down your eye.
I'll throw that, and you guys, let's talk about that one when we get into the next one. I think that's extremely important. Who knows that? Okay? Again, and people will say, E-mod, X-mod, it's an experience modification, you can just give me anything you want, but it is key to your business. Someone said earlier, there are certain people who won't look at you or do business with you until your X-mod's at a 1. Okay? I know it's a Starbucks, and this was a huge facility. We had 6,000 people working there, roasting enough coffee for the entire Eastern Seaboard. If we had somebody who came in and wanted to do a job for us, it didn't matter if they were just fixing the toilet. If they didn't have a 1.0, it was a lot of paperwork. We didn't talk to them. And so the loss is opportunities there. So does that $27,000 that you could have paid earlier, can you save that somewhere? Do you see that growing in your decisions? Absolutely. And so for most of us, if we have someone that's getting hurt and you're calling me and you're saying, I need to figure out if I'm going to pay for this thing or what we're going to do with it. There's different options now, because now you're starting to understand $27,000 may be what you put into your war chest in order to keep it at a 1. I'm not sure.
They've only taken $5,000 worth of safety training or fall protection or brand new ladders for your whole company. It saved you $21,000 by spending $5.
Right, that investment. And again, I will say, Utah OSHA, I have found, is very, very friendly to business. Almost detrimental in the sense that the $700 comes in and you say, why would I worry about doing these things if I'm just getting fined $700? They did a lot of other things previous to that. But Utah OSHA gets that, and they're usually pretty friendly. They do not want to hammer the business owners. Yes, there are new people that are coming through it, but there's usually a supervisor at OSHA that's reviewing these things. Very friendly.
But keep in mind that any dispute on the labor side, as an employer, you're always guilty until you prove yourself innocent.
Yep.
Your rights as an American citizen, innocent until proven guilty. When you're an employer, you are guilty and you have to prove your innocence.
Yeah, and they see you have the deeper pockets than the person who's hurt.
That's what they.
You know, workman's comp laws were not set up so that the economy would boom. It was about taking care of that 1%. It's interesting, there's a lot of these companies that I just thrown out there. The reason that they're so focused on it is because something happened 40 years ago and they realized why they would want to be on the right side. And so they don't look at OSHA rules anymore. They look at best practices and they go toward things like there's a new ISO standard that they have thrown out there. They look for the better practices. They're not waiting for Congress to make decisions. They're saying, what is the best decision for us? There's some great fall protection stuff out there. There's a lot of ways to eliminate chemicals. There are a lot of ways, there's a lot of better ladders out there that you can use. And the investment is something that, it's a business decision, but look at it long term. Did we jump back to the second slide? I'm out of time, I know that. So I just wanted to throw this one at you real quick, because I was talking about that 70% discount that you get. Company B has a medical situation where they have to pay $11,000, okay? But there is no comp that's put into it. What I mean to say there's no indemnification is what the workman's comp company uses. You're not going to pay for extra time because you kept that person working. You're not going to pay for possibly retraining and other things. You took care of the medical bill, you got them back to work. You only spent $11,000 on it. They end up reporting, and what it costs them and their reporting is only $3,300 because you kept that person working. So if you think about that one, we're almost looking at $7,000 that if you could have kept it within your own company, not having to lose work, lose any time, there's actually $7,000 there that most people don't see. Unfortunately, for company A, they said, I'm not bringing him back to work, he's a bad apple. Or I'm not going to waste my time having him help in the office. And what happened is this is the time off that he would have had. They let workman's comp pay the $2,400. Okay, 2 weeks, let's say, maybe a week. What that ends up costing, though, is $13,400 because workman's comp's not going to give you that discount anymore. And a lot of people don't see that. They'll just sit and say, I'm not paying this person any money. But in the end, if workman's comp is paying for it, you're actually paying, you could multiply it by almost 5 that other part.
So from the last slide, you can see that this number is going to hit that equation a lot differently than the 3,300, right? That discount really starts to add up to that modification rate because we're going to do the expected versus the observed. We're going to try those out, and if that claim is 13 because you didn't want to pay them some wages, you shot yourself in the foot for 3 whole years. How many opportunities did that cost you? How many, it's a calculation you want to be aware of. That's why I wanted you to cover it.
Yeah.
And I want you to use that in your businesses to succeed this year, be better than you've ever been.
Most of those fighting reps aren't going to be telling you those things. They just don't. It's not their best. Why? But if you have there's other places where people are actually in business trying to work with you. They want to explain that. A client 3 weeks ago had a concussion. It was violence in the workplace. It became workman's comp. So this person went home, and for the last 3 weeks, he's been at home with a concussion. Now, yes, we reported for workman's comp. That's one of those cases where I'm not going to play with concussion.
Right.
In the end, it's about $800, $900 a week they've been paying this person. At this point, cheap as anything. Cheap as anything. At what point is it not cheap? When I had the discussion with the client, I said, it's probably 4 or 5 weeks out there. We're really trying to get the concussion specialist to release him, bring him back to work. In the end, it's still about cost, but it's more important, it's about taking care of that employee. I have had to call this employee 3 times and explain to him, look, you're getting your salary continued, and right now we have use at home. This is a company that really has invested in you. And the relationship and the trust is good. There's a certain point when it's not. 5, 6 weeks watching attorneys on television and watching Jerry, you know, some of the other guys. That's what we used to do, Barry Springer. Thanks, I knew you would know that. The English know all these things. But there's a certain point where we say, okay, now the plan of attack has to change. And so you want somebody who's been through it and understands, and hopefully is just as much in business as you are.
So we'll stop there and give you guys a 5-7 minute break. Let's call it, just, we'll get back together here for just a few minutes after the hour. I hope what you took from Matthew there was protect your e-bot by building a good system.
We're gonna do a Q&A today, but more Jeopardy style. So just keep in mind you don't have to answer in the style of Jeopardy. We're gonna kind of go back and forth question and answer style. So don't feel compelled to say, what is such and such? So you don't have to think about it. We won't document points or comments. But what we're gonna go ahead and do is we're gonna call you guys out to pick a category and a number, and then have you read the question and give us your best answer to that question, and then we'll kind of go back and forth. So that's how we plan. You excited? You ready?
And you should say, if you volunteer, you will receive this really cool,
We have very exciting prizes to give away.
that we will give to you, that you can probably sell on eBay for that $2. Please volunteer.
All right, who's gonna be our first one up?
You want to go to the categories really quick? Tell us there?
That's a great idea. So our 4 categories today are legal and compliance, risk and safety, which we just talked about. There's some fun little tidbits in there that we haven't quite touched on. Leadership and business strategy, and then employee culture and engagement.
You don't have to start with a 100, you can go whatever you want.
Wherever you are.
This young lady would like to volunteer.
Make sure. What is a state interview?
You guys ever heard of those?
It's called begging.
Retain your employee, keep them there.
Good.
Very good.
Do you know what questions to ask in a state interview?
Are you happy here?
Good. One. What could we do better? Yes. 2.
What's your plans? What's your outlook? What do you?
Yeah.
There's your
Yeah, what are
future.
your goals? Yeah, what do you see yourself doing here? What do you see yourself doing in 5 years, right? State interviews are super simple when it comes to employee engagement. They don't have to be 5 minutes, right? It doesn't have to be this crazy time-consuming formal conversation. But exactly it's what do you like about being here? What can we do to change? And what would make you leave? Those 3 questions, right? So if you have your foreman out on the job site, just casually have a conversation, doesn't have to be formal, hey man, let's go lunch. In your conversation, you're asking those 3 questions, boom, you're gonna have an amazing pulse on what's going on in your business, right? What's the important thing to remember with state interviews, right?
I know.
So we should do these.
Yes, we should do these.
No, who should do these?
Oh, who should do these? These could be your foreman, it could be you as the business owner, depending on how big the organization is that you work in. It could be peer-to-peer even,
I
right?
found that they don't want to talk to an owner.
They don't want to talk
They
about
won't give the honest opinion to an owner.
Yeah, okay, that's a good point. So who do you think is a good person in your organization to have to say interview?
Well, that's what I was just asking my HR person. And she did look at me like she had the answer. She made the comment, unbiased. So I'm after the unbiased opinion. I want the truth. I don't want to have somebody lie to me because I'm the owner, which I find happens a lot.
Yes. Yeah, okay.
Okay, just one, along those lines, the who conducts them is, there's also a culture component there. When these interviews happen, if they cause change, over time you'll build trust that these are for a reason. It's not a gotcha. Yeah. I sincerely want to know, and there's a lot of different ways you can point out, let's say you conducted an actual survey, or maybe it came out of a state interview. There's a lot of ways, tricky things you can do to show that this was an employee's comment that changed this in our company. One company that we have stuck stickers
on everything that came from an employee engagement. This was in an office environment, but for the things they changed, they put a little sticker on it, and anytime somebody saw that, they knew that that had occurred because it came from a suggestion. One other thing, sorry, back to the Army. In the Army, we did things called after-action reviews, and when we did those, we learned a pattern, and the pattern was that no matter what the criticism or the critique that came to you was, if you don't defend. Instead, you say, thank you for your insight, thank you for your comment, thank you for your willingness to speak up. Just thank them for that.
No, so you made a really good point. Jeremy, like what you included, going back to what I asked Roy is, what's important to remember with state interviews, if you have someone who's giving you actionable feedback, and you implement that, or you're able to make the changes in your business because of this suggestion that came from your employees, recognize that, because they're gonna see that the time that they're spending giving this feedback is actually valuable to the business. So, you might implement this in your business today, right? You might say, hey, Foreman, go ask these 2 questions. And you might get some low-level answers, but maybe there's one guy that's just really excited to share his feedback, right? Now it's been asked. And maybe this one guy has something that you can do within your business to be implemented, right? And now suddenly you recognize that guy, and other people are like, oh, cool, they're listening to me, right? And so it takes some time, right? You have to build that into your culture, but it really can be anyone that has these conversations as long as you're following up on them, right? That's a really important component to doing state interviews. If you just do them to do them, it's kind of like doing performance reviews just because people do performance reviews. If you do them to do them, then eventually people are going to say, it doesn't really matter. You have to build that trust in that rapport over time. Does that help answer your question a little bit? Ish?
Yes.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Questions on state interviews?
Do we have to pay $100 to have the interview?
What's that? Yeah, right.
Something to say, if you have turnover at a certain time of your, what you can find out, if you turn up at a certain time, like after 3 months, it seems like we're already losing 11 people. That second month, have the same interview, just ask them, what do you love about working here? What do you like about working here? In what ways can we improve your working environment? And to be honest, what made you want to leave my company? And then take that information and go, if they're saying these reasons why I love this company, when you interview other employees or other candidates, you're going to say, the reason you want to work here is because of this and this and this. And when they say reasons that are legal because of this, make sure you check that information if you can, digest it, figure out a way you can address that issue. Okay, sorry.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you, Rick. Okay. Back to categories. Who's up next?
Risk and safety for 300.
Okay.
Boy,
what do we got
so
here?
big.
I want to make sure my job site is safe, so I should invite OSHA out for an inspection. True or false?
True.
What do you think, Matt?
What do you think, Matthew?
I'm sort of in the middle. So I'm a huge advocate of always inviting OSHA, but I also understood I was never the owner when I was making that call. And so I would say this depends. If you're the owner, go for it. Go for it. You have to understand there's going to be some cost. If they find that there are things that need to be fixed, you have 30, 60, 90 days that you're going to have to fix them. So there's some cost. But transparency is huge. And for your people, and it just goes over well. This is the right state to try and get consultation. And again, so when you get OSHA coming out, you're getting consultation. They're not talking with the compliance side, which is a good thing. They're not allowed to. But if you decide to bring them in, and then you say, I'm not going to fix it and let it go, it could tie you somehow. There's reasons that you would want to say, you're just going to have to understand there's going to be a cost and you may have to change things. So that was where I would say it depends. And I've had 2 or 3 owners, large companies, didn't want OSHA to come in because they understood that.
Our workers' comp, their loss prevention people would love to come out all the time.
Bring them out. That's
Better option.
yeah. Bring them out. That's what happens in my case. I'll do it on my own and I'll just show up and they don't have 30, 60, 90 days. as long as they want, they decide. Yeah.
Bringing OSHA out to a general contractor job could be very detrimental.
Oh, you bet.
Unless you're working with that general contractor and saying, hey, here's what I'd like to do. If you want to bring them into your shop, to say, hey, review my shop, I would recommend bringing your workers' comp carrier out and do a job site review with him rather than OSHA.
Yep.
Because then you're getting some, hey, this is what I would notice, and these changes here, less of a fine. And you're building a rapport with your workers' comp company, and I'm really concerned with safety. So,
The nice thing about bringing workman's comp out is they're going to be able to tell you how to fix it. OSHA typically won't tell you how to fix it. They'll let you know what the citation would be, what the rules are, but in most cases, they're not going to tell you how to fix it.
But in Utah, that's where we've actually had OSHA at one of these who recommended it here because we are a different state, because they're here they want people safe.
Yeah. I've had OSHA here say, you know what, I contact this company, they got a really good program, and they're best practices.
Exactly.
There's something out there, depending on how big you are, I said the electrical contractor, they went after what's called a SHARP certification the other day. And that just shows that their workman's comp is going down lower and that they've had OSHA consultation hours. What do you do with that? You can put it on your business card that you're SHARPs. You'll find the bigger companies, the Dows, the ones I meant, they've all gone to what's called BPP. They open up their books to OSHA and they say, I'll go help out other companies. BPP is sort of like being an ISO standard, and that's what they sell, that we are beyond safety and we want to help other companies. And so you'll get tied into those, but it doesn't cost money. And I would agree with you. Make sure you got permission. If it's somebody else, my two bosses at FedEx didn't want it to ever happen. I understand. Other companies that I worked for, they couldn't wait. In fact, that's how they started saying, you know what, we'll give you a bonus if you can set these things up and take care of this. It's a great way to start moving forward. Okay. So it depends, but I would say yes. True, bring them on. It depends.
Awesome. Thanks, Matthew. All right, what's up? Next afterwards. We've been making progress, so I'm calling it.
Legal and compliance.
Legal and compliance for 100. We have, what is the difference between salary and hourly?
Salary gets to choose when and how they do their work. Hourly get paid by the hour.
Okay. Yes, right track.
Salary has to manage people more than themselves. They have to manage something.
Manage something. Okay, what else?
They have to be able to make decisions for the company based on their own decision.
Good point. Anything else? Can I just classify anyone as a salaried employee?
What?
No.
No, yeah. I can't classify just anyone as a salaried employee, right? Like if I'm paid $7.25, boom, you're salaried. Right, okay. Does anyone know what the minimum threshold is for someone on a salary earning basis is? What they have to earn in a year?
That was 45. I can't.
In some states, yes, you're close. Utah follows federal, so it's $684 a week minimum they have to earn as a salaried employee. What else do we need to remember about salary versus hourly employees, right?
Well, what I can't do is, let's say that Judy is my assistant and she's working a lot of overtime. So I say, I can't afford to keep paying overtime to Judy. How about I just make her salary and that way I don't have to pay her overtime for all these extra hours that she's working. As a owner of my business, I can't do that. That's illegal. If I get busted by the Department of Labor, which Biden has a lot of inspectors out there right now, they like to do these audits, then I will get fined, not only for Judy, my assistant, but the Department of Labor will come in and look at all your other employees as well and go, are these people classified correctly?
Now, she manages a couple of other assistants, you could do that.
If she was managing a couple of other assistants, if she was classified correctly, when I say classified, there are certain things under the Department of Labor guidelines that say, hey, these people can be salaried. like they're computer specialty positions, not help desk support, but like web developers, they can be salaried. Lawyer positions like doctors, lawyers, they can be salaried. Positions like that actually manage people, manage processes even, those people can be salaried. The duties is my administrative assistant, probably not making crucial decisions for the company, she should not be salaried. So it's really important, you guys look at people and go, are these people classified correctly? If they're not, call us or somebody else and say, I need to make sure that these people are classified correctly. If not, then make sure that you reclassify them in the right category. Because otherwise it can cost you a lot of money. In fact, I think my last one, I had to pay $50,000 in my last company because this person was misclassified.
Yeah, because you'll pay back wages for overtime too and owed wages. So you can have some pretty hefty costs associated with misclassifying people. You can look up like an FLSA checklist online if you just Google FLSA checklist.
That's a fair game of standards act.
Yep. It'll run you through the different types of exemptions. So you have your administrative exemption, you have professionals, paraprofessionals, you have your executives, and you have your computer technology specialists. And so that will give you some general criteria on what these people are responsible for, what they're doing, and if they actually meet within that exemption. So salaried is you are exempt from overtime, hourly is you are not exempt from overtime. And so anything over 40 in the state of Utah would allow you to earn that higher rate. Questions?
You don't want to put your owner on salary because you will not be able to afford him on hourly.
Yeah. That's a good point.
Or the opposite.
All right, cool. Who's up? Another category.
It was, hey, he's the one that said it. But I like his ideas.
Leadership and business strategy for 200. Go. How often should you be conducting performance reviews with your employees? This is an interesting one because you guys are kind of in a different industry. Sometimes it doesn't work. Who does performance reviews? Any type of performance review. Okay. In what format do you do your performance reviews?
We do them with the direct supervisors, and it's a written format, but it used to be quarterly, but now semi-annual.
Semi-annually. Why did you change from quarterly to semi-annual?
That's a good
We had to pay,
question. Go back, yes.
it was all about pay, because after you meet with those guys, they actually want more money.
Yeah.
Anytime they have a review, they think it's because they came in and they've worked, then they need more money.
Yeah.
And that's a good point, Ralph, because when we started this, it was to kind of improve safety, improve
Exactly.
performance, improve productivity, retention, and all that. And it became just, it was an expensive process every time we do it. Because of the competitive nature in the employee market right now.
Right.
Yeah. Good point. Okay. Anyone else doing performance reviews?
I do mine with speaking to the foreman, have the foreman kind of, working with the guy, and hey, these recommendations I made to him, and then debrief the foreman to, hey, what did you learn? How's it feeling? We got an apprentice looking for a step raise. How's he feeling? So I'm not really coming right to them, sitting down, and doing it kind of behind the scenes. They're being reviewed, but they don't know.
Cool. So a little bit more informal, right? Not a formal process. Okay.
Ours is a little different, but we have the plumbers reviewing apprentices, apprentices reviewing plumbers.
Okay. Like that. So you have almost 360-degree feedback going. Okay. Cool. Do you find when you do that there's opportunity for these apprentices to have developmental opportunities because they're kind of getting that feedback?
Find out which plumbers aren't teaching, which plumbers are complete waste of time, why are we putting an apprentice with them if they won't do anything, or vice versa. This plumber, said this apprentice is worthless, but everybody else is great. You learn, because you don't want to stick an apprentice with a plumber who's going to sit there and not learn anything for a year. You learn a lot of stuff like that.
Cool. So you're kind of using it as like internal feedback from the company too on what hotspots you need to pay attention to.
Which guys are working, the apprentices are expensive,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, industry standard right now is that quarterly review, and I totally understand where you're coming from, where people just kind of expect it to be, oh great, I had a great review, now I get a raise, right? Not necessarily, implementing some sort of bonus structure or merit increase process that's separate from performance reviews. One thing that we talk to our clients a lot about with performance reviews is not tying into compensation. and really making it more about that internal feedback process, right? It's an opportunity for you to communicate with your employees as much as your employees communicating back to you. And acting on those action items, right? So now you have, again, a pulse check on your company to say, do we need to move some of our apprentices around to different plumbers because they're getting better opportunities, and then how are we going to follow up with plumbers who are not supporting our business? Anything you'd add, Rick?
Yeah, there is a stigma when you call it a review. So maybe call it a one-on-one, which is what we do at my company.
So is that how you change the culture of that?
Yeah.
Because I would like to have that information, but every time we do, it's costing me another $1.
Yeah, well, it's more of a check-in with the employees, not necessarily a formal review, it's more of a, how are you doing, what are you working on, and how can I help you? Those kinds of things. You can call it what you want.
You need a job?
What you don't want to do is check in with your employee every 6 months or a year, because nothing's going on with their head or where they are with the company, are they planning on leaving? If you check with them every 3 months and just say, how are you doing? That should be your very first question. How are you doing? Not necessarily about work or anything else, it's you. When you connect with them in that way, what you do is building trust, so they feel like they're connected to the organization rather than this is just another job.
Yeah. It doesn't have to be a performance review. It can be a one-on-one. It can be, let's talk about your employee development, right? We have one client, they're HVAC installers, and they were having a hard time retaining employees because the employees didn't see a long-term future for themselves within the business. And they're like, well, how do we create that? Because really we're a pretty small organization. It's not like we have a lot of promotional opportunities. So what we did is we created an employee development program where you start as an installer 1, you move to an installer 2, you can move to an installer 3, and from there you can take a management track or a mentor track. And the company is actually implementing different things within those tracks that kind of help the employees see where they fit, right? So on the mentor track, they're working with some of those newer employees, those newer installers, to really get them up to speed with the business, with the company, with the culture. The management track, they're sending those people out to external learning opportunities like these, right? Where they can learn a new skill, maybe they're offering some additional opportunities within the business, they're involved in the hiring process, right? And so they're kind of tailoring that review, that performance process to their business and not making it just about, money and, okay, you've been here for 6 months, you get a raise. They're implementing kind of steps and milestones that employees can achieve. So there's a lot of different ways that you can take that idea of a performance review and tweak it, right? You're just changing the optics on it. It's kind of like saying, I'm going to give you a lifestyle spending account, but really I'm just going to give you a bonus. But all of a sudden, this employee's like, oh, cool, lifestyle spending account, I'm going to go buy my ski pass, my company paid for it, right? Versus the traditional bonus, like, oh, I got a bonus, guys, great, what am I going to do with it? So you're just changing the optics, but there's a lot of opportunities in that. Quotes? Questions?
Could you combine kind of some of your state interview items, including in this performance review as well, just kind of revisit that with your employees at that time too?
Exactly, yeah. State interviews, one-on-ones, reviews, all those conversations are really the same thing. It just depends on how formal you want to make it. And I think in the market now, the less formality you have behind it, kind of the better conversation I think you end up having, as long as you're following up on that feedback, right? And inviting the employee to provide that feedback to you. Questions? Okay. We'll go on to another one. Who's up? Employee culture and engagement for 300. Employee culture and engagement for 300. As a leader in the company, I should make it a point to never apologize, as it shows a sense of guilt and means it's true or false. False. Are resounding false? That's great. Who wants to say that, right?
I'm about to take this one. I read a book recently that taught me how to apologize. A lot of leaders and people actually don't know how to apologize. And so I'm going to teach you guys how to apologize today. And I promise you it will change the way that it will change your life as it did mine when I read this book. So too often when we apologize, we say things like, yeah, well, I'm really sorry, but this and this and this, and if you wouldn't have done that, or if this would have happened, then I wouldn't be that way. No. There's a time to apologize, and there's a time to explain what had happened. So when you apologize, and you know what, you didn't have to apologize as leaders, even when you did nothing wrong, even when you're totally innocent, I remember once at AVP, actually, just down the street. I used to walk around in the morning as the manager, and I would just say good morning to everybody. Good morning, Caitlin, how are you doing? Just kind of let them know that I'm there, and that I wanted to wish them a good day. And one lady, middle-aged woman, she was kind of weird anyway. She came to me one day and said, "Hey Roy, I don't appreciate it when you come and say good morning to me." Oh. And I go, "Oh, I'm really sorry. What do you mean?" And she said, "Well, I think it's disingenuous that you just walk around and say good morning to me, and it's rather that you don't say that." So my take was, I'm really sorry. I didn't mean to offend you, and I will not say good morning to you. So I did nothing wrong. In fact, I thought I was doing everything right, and I had to apologize anyway. As leaders, you guys will have to apologize. And here's how you're going to apologize, whether it's to your employee, whether it's to your spouse, whether it's to your kid, whether it's to your neighbor. I'm going to teach you how to do that today. I promise you, if you use this, it will work for you. What you're going to say is, "I'm sorry," or "I apologize. I'll try to be better next time." "I apologize. I'll try to be better next time." And leave it at that. Don't say anything else. Walk away. If your spouse, walk away. I promise you, she's going to let you go. Because it's weird. But here's something. Now we're all going to say it together. "I apologize. I'll try to be better next time." Okay, hold on. No. I apologize. I'll try to be better next time. 1, 2, 3.
I apologize, I'll try to be better next time.
I promise you it will work. At work, with my family, wherever it is. I did this presentation for another group, and one of the guys came to me afterwards and said, "Right, I use it on my wife," and she looked at me like, "Oh my gosh, who are you?" So try it.
But where were you 10 years ago? But one thing we tend to do when we apologize.
He's sorry, he'll do better next time.
But we try to justify.
Exactly.
Don't it's not apologize.
Yeah.
Let me justify why I yelled at you.
And there's a time for that, but that's not the time for it. That's the time for you to apologize. You can talk about it other stuff later.
Yeah.
Okay.
I love it. Nice. Oh, next.
Oh, did we get a present?
Yeah, she got that. Call some gentlemen in the back.
All right, to leadership and business strategy for 200.
For 200? Leadership and business strategy for 200.
Oh,
Oh, we just said that one. Sorry, we'll go 300. How was that? This is actually a good one for Jeremy. What is the most important document I should be reviewing to grow my business?
We have an opinion?
Profit and loss statement.
You probably like it.
Why did you say that?
We started having a quarterly review of our profit and loss statement of our company, just to kind of see, what are we doing well in, what are we not doing well in, what should we be focusing on, do we need more training in the area, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I love it. Does anybody else here have any great experiences or best practices with your profit and loss statement, things you look at that help you? Before I share my thoughts.
I think as your company gets bigger, you start to a point where your accountant is really knocking profit and loss for you. You don't even understand it anymore. You have to understand profit and loss and what your losses really are, what your profits really are. Where do I need to focus? Because that's where we make our money. What time do I need to spend? Because this is where my home is. This is where I'm losing. Maybe it's tax strategies. Maybe it's the type of work that you're looking at. Why on this side of the job would do better than this side of the job as far as margins? Maybe it's a mix that you've got to have to make your business successful. You have to understand. Your secretary needs to know how to put those numbers in so that everything's in the right category. Because if you have to read your profit and loss and want to hold it now, there's no way we made that much money. Something's not right. They're back through it with a crunch everything. Very important, either whatever. Very important position to have. You understand it as well, but you got to know how to read it.
So, Chris, this is the same thing that I just dealt with last night with my accountant, the IRS.
Yeah.
They told me I made this much and I gave back to the IRS.
Really, comparing month over month, meeting monthly with your executive team. I mean, you can start comparing month over month and you can plan months in advance. I know that this month, we're slow every year. So, hey, I'm going to tell my guys, if you want time off, it's your time. I know that this is just crazy busy, so I know if we're maxed out the month before, it's time to get another truck on the road so we can prepare for that. I mean, once you start planning month over month and looking at those things, really you'll see trends year after year, the same thing, month after month. You just, put them right over each other and see it.
I love the comments so far. There's 3 documents I want you to think about, and I want just to tell you one quick thing about each 3 of these. The balance sheet. Some of that you look at with your accountant and say, yeah, sure, equity and my liabilities and my assets. What am I looking at, right? I just want you to think about your balance sheet as your sanity check. You should be able to look at that, especially as a smaller company, but as you get bigger, it's a little tougher to do this, but as a smaller company, be able to kind of look at that and say, is that kind of what I'm seeing in my bank accounts? And there should be a general sanity check there. Oh yeah, that's close. We're in the ballpark. If that's close, you're ready to move over to your income statement, which is the accountant name for your profit and loss, right? So your income statement, the thing I want you to think about in your income statement, so I want you to break it into 2 parts. The upper part is going to be where you find your gross profit margin. Gross profit margin, depending on how you set up your chart of accounts, depending on how you do things, that number could mean something different. But in general, if you can figure out what your gross profit margin is, you can start to understand some of the revenue flow of how am I making my money, right? How am I making my money? What is actually flowing into my company? After that, the bottom part is my net profit. And that's where I can start to understand, okay, now I understand how I'm making my money. Now I can understand where is that money going. Start looking at all those expense lines and you start identifying some of the things you mentioned. So I want you to think about your income statement in that way, your profit and loss in that way. And the third document you may or may not have access to is a cash flow statement. And that cash flow statement can do some of the things you talked about. You start to project forward. If you aren't budgeting or doing a cash flow projection of some kind, I'm telling you that's the next step probably for you in your company to start to take it to the next level. If you have the ability to project forward on your cash flow, you'll be able to make great decisions. Otherwise, you're just throwing darts, and you won't make great decisions. So I want to leave those three things with you. Went a little bit outside the scope of this question, but I don't think there's any more questions about those documents, so just wanted to share that with you.
Thanks, Jeremy. Any other questions on that one?
Well, I guess just with that, and that helps you decide, can we afford another truck? Can we afford this? So,
There's a lot of labor.
another piece of equipment.
Exactly.
Awesome. How about back here? Well, I see this.
Legal and compliance for 400.
Legal and compliance for 400. It's gonna be fun on there right now. What is the difference between a 1099 contractor and a W-2 employee?
A 1099 is a person that you hired that's not your employee that you hired to like long term. A 1099 is when you hire like a subcontractor or something like that. Then you get a 1099 too.
Yes, very good. What else? What's an important distinction between a W-2 and a 1099?
Who controls what you do?
Exactly.
A 1099, you give them the job and they go do it when, where, however they want.
Yes.
W-2 is under your direction.
Yes. What about employment policies? Can you hold a 1099 accountable for your employment policies? Do you have a handbook or?
Safety.
What else? Did you have some here? Oh, sorry. Okay. Yeah, great point. So 1099, there's no such thing as a 1099 employee. I hear that all the time from our clients. I actually had one client, I redid their handbook recently, and they had 1099 employee as an employment classification in their handbook. And I was like, no, we gotta take that out. There's no such thing. A 1099 is exactly that. It's your subcontractor. It's a contractor, right, that you're bringing into the business. They have a skill set. They have their own tools and equipment. They're at their own direction to get that job done, right? So you might be paying them like on a per project basis. You can pay 1099s on an hourly basis, but generally it's a per project they're invoicing you that. Versus a W-2, right? They're under their workers' comp. Your workers' comp is a business, and you are paying them as an hourly or salary employee. They are subject to all your employment policies. practices. So that's a huge distinction. Matthew, what happens if a 1099 employee, or, see, I did it. What happens if a 1099 contractor gets injured on your job site, but you didn't collect their COI?
You can be held responsible, and it could go against your own workman's comp. Courts will look at a few things now. They'll say, are you giving them tools? They'll say, are they using the ladders that belong to your company? And if any of those things fit, that person is no longer 1099. You've had them as an employee in your workman's comp. If you give them a shirt that says BBSI, and yet they have their separate company, or if that's on camera somewhere, those courts are now, again, courts don't look favorably upon business owners. They just don't. And so they're looking to take care of that one every time. So you need to make sure you're picking up COIs, or at least know that they're opting out of having workman's comp, and keep everything, and just review them constantly.
Does everyone use some sort of 1099 contractor agreement, or have some sort of document that way? Maybe yes, maybe no. You can find samples of those online. SHRM has a great resource. SHRM is a Society for Resource Management, so it's vetted and it's compliant. At the very least, I would suggest having some sort of independent contractor agreement for all of these people that you're hiring to do jobs. Part of that contractor agreement is going to include that they are providing their workers' comp cert, that they are responsible for their own tools, equipment, all of that. And generally will include information on what the job is that they're doing. So it's just it's a legal document, it protects you. I do suggest having legal counsel review that document if it's something you're going to implement in your business, but I wouldn't go without it. Kind of like with employment, it's really important to have offer letters, right? Because that becomes part of the employee's record. So if there's ever questions on, oh, hey, the foreman interviewed me and told me that he was going to pay me $25 an hour, but I've only been paid $20. You have an offer letter that includes that information, really simple, they signed it, there's just no argument on what they're owed, right? So 1099 independent contractor agreements are very important.
I would say bare minimum, if you are having these problems or looking at it, I wouldn't pay anybody until they show you their COI, or unless they can show you that they have opted out of workman's comp. But I would always make sure you're getting something when you're paying them.
Yeah, cool. Thank you guys so much. Any questions on 1099
Well, Matthew just mentioned twice, opted out of workman's comp to the group. Who can opt out of workman's comp?
An owner of a company.
That's it, right? So it's with Chuck in a truck, he can opt out. Everybody else can. If they've got W2 employees that they're bringing on site, so.
Okay, awesome. Let's see, we got, I don't want to keep you guys much, 10 more minutes. Let's do this one more.
Risk and safety, 500.
Risk and safety.
Big
Big money, here we go.
No, you didn't find it.
Does my company need a designated safety officer?
I'd say it's on size.
Dependent on size, okay? Anyone else agree or disagree?
We have contracts that require someone to sign as a designated safety officer.
Right?
Now, is that better to be the owner, or is that better to be another individual? I don't know where that liability falls, that's a question.
That's a good question. Matthew?
Yeah, I would say, again, right answer, it depends. If you look at size, OSHA's going to look at competent people. So let's say you, for some reason, trying to think one with plumbing where you have to have a competent, I'm going to use forklifts. You guys probably don't use them that much, but to do training for forklifts, you have to have someone you can say is competent. Who gets to decide that one? You do. How do you prove it? Someone's got some experience. It's pretty easy. So that safety officer, not usually going to be required except if someone else is asking you for it. OSHA is always going to come and say, who is the person that I would be answering these things? And since you're tied to the bottom line, I would make sure that it is probably you answering those questions unless you trust someone much more when it comes to codes. Or you have a consultant, somebody else that shows up there. And there's a lot of those guys out there. A lot of people like that. They're willing to sell their wares. Did that answer the question?
On a job where you have to sign that for a contract, maybe that means signing as a general manager and I'm the safety, designated safety officer. Take that and we don't do this, but maybe it's an idea, you take that now, a blank copy, you take that to your foreman and say, I need you to read their safety manual, I need you to sign as the designated officer. So he is saying to the company, to me, that he's the designated officer. I'm saying to the general contractor that it's me. And so you're trying to tie in the foreman and maybe even go down deeper into the job, saying, you guys are all tied to this contract. You all have a part of this in safety.
Yeah.
You're certifying back to the company that you're the guy, and I'm certifying to the general contractor that I'm the guy. I just,
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, I think that's where obviously your training and like toolbox topics and safety plans are really handy because you have those on hand and that's part of your onboarding process, right? Which we didn't really get into, but you know, when you orient new employees, they should have access to that information. We should be providing that to them up front, making sure that they know where to find it, what the safety protocol is from day one, right? If we're delaying the training on that, then you're just opening yourself up to safety issues.
If you don't tell them who's responsible, they're gonna call OSHA. Because they're just gonna feel that there's no relationship there. And so once that trust is broken, it is so easy to get online and leave an anonymous complaint. And that costs a lot of money in the end. And it just shows that you don't have the safety culture that you hoped to have.
Yeah, awesome. All right, we'll do one more. It'll be like a daily double, but it won't have the fun music. Employee culture for 500. Employee culture engagement for 500. This is one for right. Really scarce. What are 3 things I can do to engage my employees that cost nothing or close to nothing? So, Ray, before you answer, what are things that you guys do to keep your employees engaged? Do you know what employee engagement is? Is engagement the same as employee satisfaction?
No.
Good. Okay. What do you do to keep your employees engaged?
We have, at least for our plumbing, we have the employees teach training such as plumbing safety, things like that, where every week a different plumber, even an apprentice, they have to do a training.
Okay.
And they can have, the manager or, whatever, they'll help if they need it. But they can choose a topic, they can choose it, they can do a research, do whatever they want. If they need product, we can give them product so they can show everybody.
Okay.
But it forces them to learn, it forces them to teach other people, and,
I love that. What else? What other things do you guys do for employees engaged? Okay. That 9 times out of 10 will work. Good.
we just went through our 30-year anniversary, and the guys all signed a card, and they made a plaque with a pipe wrench on it, congratulations, and so that engages them into the company.
Oh, I love
So
that.
it may not be engaging the safety policy or something to do with the health, but it's engaging them to the business.
Yeah.
Hey, we're celebrating this, we'd like some ideas, hey, we're gonna get together for Christmas, hey, anybody have any ideas of what we can do?
They're
You're
part of the
engaging them
mindset.
into, they feel like a part of it.
Chris, you're really that old?
Yeah.
All right.
Wow, congratulations.
3
Oh, I know, I
things
worked
It's not like,
5
hey,
years ago.
been doing it since he's been diapers.
Yes, some people think employee engagement is having the qualities, and that might be part of it. Some people think it's passing out swag. Some people think it's paying your employees. The truth is, employee engagement is very simply an act of connecting with your employees to build trust. That's all it is, an act of connecting with your employees to build trust. Trust in who? Trust in you as the leader, trust in the company, trust in the company that they're doing the right thing, the company is. Trust in their job, that they love their job, and most importantly is trust that they have a future in your organization. If they trust that they're going to grow with your company, they're going to be there for a long time. So how do you engage your employees? You do it with everything that you can, whether it's with stay interviews, whether we talked about that. You can do it with performance reviews. You can do it with company parties. You can do it with things like. Just tell me about mine.
We have one client that has an employee ambassador committee. And so these employees have decided to come into this committee and they act as a pulse check on the company, which is great because you get that level of trust, right? It's not the owner coming and saying, it's peer to peer. And they get to be involved in planning the activities and implementing new benefits, new ideas. We have the other client that does the employee development program, right? The employee development program did not cost them a dime. It just gives them kind of a more of a standard trajectory on what employees can expect if they decide to stay with the company for a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years longer. Having that structure in place didn't cost them anything besides time to put it together, right? Which we will do those things for you, but we'll help them implement it. And now suddenly you can sit down with a brand new apprentice, brand new installer, maybe some kid that doesn't really have a lot of experience but wants to learn the trade, and say, in 3 years, this is what you can earn, and this is how you get there, right? So now this employee has a direction and a purpose to being engaged with their work, right? They're not just doing it to do it, right? You have to give them some sort of purpose.
Thanks, Caitlin. And the Harvard Business Review guys said the main thing about employee engagement is communication. If you guys can learn how to communicate with your people, and sometimes it's as simple as sending out an email that says, hey guys, today is Caitlin's birthday. Thanks, Caitlin, for being with us. We love you, and thanks for the great job that you do. And then maybe you give her a $10 gift card or a $25 gift card, something that says, you're part of our organization, we're connected with you to build trust. And if you guys don't do that, do it. It's really simple. Even like celebrating work anniversaries. At BBSI, this costs us nothing. But on your work anniversary, we'll send an email out to everybody in our department that says, hey, congratulations, Bill's been here for 10 years. Thanks, Bill, for all that you do. We love having you with the company. Then everybody else signs in on the email saying, hey, congratulations, Bill. I didn't know you've been here for 10 years. Remember when we did this and this? And that's when you first got it. Things like that. All of a sudden, you're connecting that employee to your organization. It's a big difference. These are things that cost little to nothing, but we're not doing as people. And then you wonder why people are leaving your organization. It's the small things that matter. The biggest thing that you guys can do to connect with your employees, this is a tip that I realized years ago, was outside of your organization, when you guys have company parties and things like that, maybe it's at the zoo or maybe it's at your organization, and you invite families, make sure that as owners, you take the time to go and visit your employees with their families. I promise you, this makes such a profound effect on that person. But when you go and start talking to them, you go, hey Bill, it's great to meet you over here. I mean, great to see you over here. This is your wife, and these are your kids. So how old are you guys? Oh, cool. What do you guys do for fun? Well, you guys play soccer? I used to play soccer when I was a kid too. All of a sudden, you're going to leave those guys after 2 minutes, and you're going to walk away, and that wife is going to say to Bill, your boss is so cool. The kids are going to go, yeah, this is a really cool place to work. All of a sudden, you made that connection. You're building trust. But too many of us don't take those small opportunities to engage your employees, to communicate with your people. Please do that. It's so simple, and it costs almost nothing.
Yeah. The one last thing I'll add with engagement, this comes up a lot, I've noticed especially in the trades industries, is we just can't find people that want to do the work anymore, right? People want to sit in an office or stay at home. They don't want to get down and dirty and do the work, right? It's harder to find those really hardworking, almost laborers. The one thing that I've noticed, and that kind of comes up in trends, is that at the end of the day, people want to be treated like people, right? That is across generations, career stages, life stages. People want to be treated like people. So when you find those employees, regardless of age, career, life stage, younger, older, whomever, and you're building your employment practices and your culture around the fact that regardless of how old they are, what background they come from, that they want to be treated like a person, boom, you have your answer to engagement, right? And people generally want to fulfill some sort of purpose. So if you can connect the purpose back to what they're doing, hey, we're building this project and this is the impact it's going to have on our community. Maybe it's the impact is, hey, we're fixing this person's plumbing, and they've been out of plumbing for a couple of days, and it's really just taking a toll on their day-to-day lives. You're a part of that. People want to be connected to that. So just keep those things in mind. It's not a complicated mindset, but I think it's really easy to apply. Like, hey, people want to be treated like people. So what can we do within our employment practices to make sure that we are creating that as a bottom line?